What did people think of the cast light demo? You think that's going to be a helpful tool? And clearly a lot of organizations are starting to use that, and that kind of plays in really well to the theme of the next couple of segments here, because we really are going to begin talking more about patients as customers and consumerism and this whole move towards kind of retail medicine, if you will. And so we've got Daniel Kornprobst is going to come up in a moment. We've got MJ from CPN, who is going to, I think, introduce some of our physicians and some patient stories there. And then I'm going to share a brief update on some of the work that we've been doing around the patient experience. And so as we've started to develop this Office of Patient Experience, we just simply put out on the website that there's a department here to advocate for you, the customer. And in this very short period of time of just probably 4 months, we've received probably 50 or 60 different calls. And only I can count on one hand the number of those calls that were about the clinical practice of medicine or a clinical outcome. That wasn't their primary beef or their primary issue with us. It's consistently come down to the fact that we weren't listening to them, we weren't considerate of their time, that we didn't really explain things well to them, that they were confused about their bill or about a number of things. So I think time in and time out, we get the clinical stuff right more than just the majority of the majority of time. So does that work? That's how I fix things at home, because I'm not very handy in that regard. But anyway, so the voice of the customer is just so compelling. And we're really now just starting this journey, and no pun intended, you'll see just one slide today about some work we've been doing around journey mapping, and that's looking at the life of the experience through the eyes of the patient, through the eyes of the family and the friends. And these things that are called moments of truth, these things in the eyes of the patient that are really important to them. And I think where we've taken a big misstep in this industry is that we have assumed that we know what they want. And maybe because we're all patients, and if we haven't been, we all will be someday, that we think we can sometimes act and speak on their behalf. But it's a very unique thing of what's important to you as a patient and a customer. And this tool called journey mapping really helps expose what are the things that are most important to our customers. And many times it's not things that that cost money. It's really about how do we treat them with empathy and kindness and help guide them through this journey. So when we were at the Cleveland Clinic, and somebody had forwarded me an email even before the Cleveland Clinic, and a number of us went there for the Patient Experience Summit. And they hold that every year. They've held it for the last 5 years. But somebody before that, and I got to see this individual that I'm going to play a clip on, and somebody had sent me this particular clip and that you're about to see. And sometimes, I think we get so caught up in the work that what we do, it's sometimes nice to see it through the perspective of some different eyes. And so what you're about to see is just a very brief video from a very eloquent and very informed and outspoken 15-year-old named Morgan Gleason. So some of you may have seen this video, but just think about this from not just her perspective, but the perspective of a lot of our patients and customers, and I think this will resonate with a lot of folks here. Then after that, Daniel, if you can come on up.
So the doctors don't let you sleep at all. Like, if you think you're going to get sleep, then you're crazy. Because they come in at 6 in the morning, and they don't all come together. There's a med student first, most of the time, and then there's another one, and then there's another one, and then there are residents, and then there's the actual doctor, who's the actual important one, and then my other doctor, my rheumatologist, he comes in at noon, like a normal person on his lunch break, and he actually cares about me, so he lets me sleep. But then the other ones are just like, oh, no, I don't care, like, do you need sleep to heal? No, I don't think so. Like, that's crazy. Like, who needs sleep? That's not important. So they come in at whatever time, at 6 in the morning, and I am here, and I need sleep. I need to be awake. I need to be happy. And I've tried to tell them that I give better answers, and I will talk to you more. I will participate more if I'm not laying in bed like, what did you say to me? Are you talking to me? I'm asleep. I'm sorry. Yeah, so that's not going to work if you're not getting me engaged and talking to you. Then that's how people work together and do things, because they talk. And if they don't talk, then it's bad. It's just not good. It's not good. And it really annoys me too when they ignore you and they try to talk to your parents. Like, I am 15 years old. I know that's not that old, but at least I should have some say in what I want being done to me. Like, I am the patient and I need to be heard. Like, I am the patient. It's going to end up happening to me anyway. So if you try to leave the room to protect me from whatever, it doesn't work. I would like to hear what you're about to do to me. If you're about to poke me with a freaking needle, tell me. If you're about to cut off my arm, tell me. I need to know.
Well, guys, thank you for being here and welcome back from lunch. I don't know how you follow that. It's a pretty tall order. But my name's Dan, and I've been at the network for 2.5 years. I recently changed roles and moved into the new Office of Patient Experience. I'm serving there as a director. And one of the delights of my job is being able to listen and meet with and talk to patients about their experience. It has provided me a perspective, and it provides our office a perspective that is so unique and so precious. And so it's been an awesome journey, just a few months that I've been there. And today I'd like to share an experience with you guys from a patient. In fact, you just heard from her. Her name is Morgan Gleason. Community, could you please welcome Morgan Gleason to our LDI? Have a seat right there. So, that was a pretty powerful video.
Yeah.
And a lot of people think so. In fact, you've been a favorite share and like on Facebook and Twitter. I think Forbes did an article on you. You've been a guest blogger with Stanford. You seem to share an experience that's so common for folks and that they can really identify with. And you're not too shy to share your opinion either, which makes it easier. Why'd you shoot the video?
So basically, I had been in the hospital for 4 days with meningitis, and I wasn't getting very much sleep because I was on high doses of steroids. So I was really frustrated, and the doctors and the med students and the nurses and the lab people kept coming in at 5 or 6 in the morning. So I was just venting to my mom, and she asked if she could video it, and I said, sure. So then I didn't realize that it was going to be such a big problem with everybody else. I had never really noticed that everybody else was having the same problems I was.
I've had a chance to kind of get to know you in preparation for today, but would you be willing to kind of share with the room what's been going on the last few years and why you've had so much involvement in the experience within healthcare?
I have an autoimmune disease called juvenile dermatomyositis, and it's a vascular disease, and it affects the muscles in the skin mainly, and it makes me very tired, and I have a lot of pain, and I take 21 pills a day. I see 12 different doctors, and I go in monthly for 2 infusions. So over the years, I've had a lot of experience in the healthcare world.
Yeah, I mean, I really appreciate your video, and I know it came across my desk just randomly when I was I think with the performance improvement team, and I just started forwarding it, and I think it circulated around Community Health Network. So we really appreciate you taking the time to shoot that video. In that video, you share your experience kind of on YouTube or whoever's watching. Talk to us a little bit about your experience of sharing your opinion like live with your physicians and your caregivers and things like that.
So I found that they generally react in one of 2 ways. They'll either be really kind and willing to do whatever, like what I request, or they'll be really adverse to doing it differently than they normally do. and they try to convince me to do it their way. So I've had an example of I like to get my labs and my IV drawn separately, because I think it causes less pain for me because I don't have to wiggle it around in my arm. And I found they get a better sample and it doesn't clot as often. So one time after I asked for that, I heard the IV lady in the hallway talking to my nurse, and she said that I absolutely refused to let her draw the blood from the IV. So I thought that was strange because I thought it was a pretty simple request.
How open have they been with you as you've shared kind of your feedback to, you say that it's kind of gone both ways, but has there been any surprises along the way other than the one you just raised about how people respond to you when you say, hey, this is what I'm actually wanting right now?
I've gotten a lot of emails from different people, and they've been in probably 3 different categories. And it's been, one, they're either thanking me and they're thanking me for speaking up and giving patients a voice, or they're asking me for advice and they're thankful when I share my experiences and stories. Or I've even had a few emails where people have said that they realized that they needed to change their doctors because they felt like they weren't getting the care they wanted, or felt like their doctors weren't treating them how they wanted to be treated.
When we were having lunch earlier, we were talking to you a little bit about the frequency of your treatments and things like that. Can you offer a little bit about that?
So I go for an infusion. I go for 2 infusions twice or every 6 weeks, and they've just started raising that, so it's become more spread out. So I get it every 6 weeks, and it went from 4 to 5 to now I'm trying to 6, and that's been working pretty good so far.
Good. A lot of coordination, when we were talking earlier about all the scheduling and things like that. So if we kind of zoom out of the inpatient room a little bit and talk about ambulatory settings and scheduling and lab tests and things like that, what sort of experiences have you had there?
So I've had a lot of experiences I have some doctors' visits are not as good as others, and the one that I'm about to share is one that was particularly inconvenient and inefficient. So I've been having severe back pain recently, and I went to after telling my rheumatologist about it, every visit, he finally ordered an x-ray, and once that came back normal, then he referred me to an orthopedic, which in the orthopedic appointment took 2 weeks to schedule. That was the closest appointment. And it's hard to wait that long when you're in pain and you don't know what's happening. So when I got there, I had to do a stack of paperwork because even though I had to fill out a stack of paperwork even though I was already an existing patient. So then once I got into the actual room, though, it seemed like they ignored all of the paperwork I just filled out and asked me the same exact questions over again. So I thought, well, what's the point of filling out stacks of paperwork if you're just going to ask me the same exact questions? And my dad had to take off work so he could drive me an hour to the appointment, wait for an hour at the visit, and then only have a 5-minute appointment with the doctor where he told me the test results were normal and he couldn't do anything else. I thought this could be covered easily in a quick 5-minute phone call rather than driving all the way to the appointment.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And since doing the video that we just watched, you've been getting calls. You went to the Cleveland Clinic. Again, you did the guest writing for Stanford. You've been on the radio several times, kind of sharing your experience. And it's kind of created a bit of a brand for you, mm-hmm. with patient advocacy. And what's been cool when I looked through your website and different blog posts was you're starting to feature kind of what patient-centered looks like and what it doesn't look like. And what's neat about that is you're not just talking about the bad. You're showing and highlighting where things went really well. So what are some of those topics that you've covered kind of over the past few months?
So sometimes when I'm in the hospital and I'm trying to sleep and I have a headache, I get light sensitive to the IV poles and the computer screen. So one of my nurses came up with a really simple idea of just putting a blanket over the IV pole. And you would think that would be kind of common sense, but the fact that she tried to come up with a way to help me and make me feel better and more comfortable. I was really appreciative of that, and I thought it was a really great way for her to accommodate your patient's needs. And there have also been when doctors talk directly to me instead of to my mom about me when I'm sitting right next to them. I really appreciate that because it makes me feel like a human and not an object. So there's also another one, the pharmacy where I get my bubble packs, or where I get my medications from, they come in individual bubble packs with the medication and the dosage and the date on the back. And I thought that idea was really a great thing to help patients organize all their medications, because if any of you have ever had multiple medications, you know, it's a pain to fill up every pill box at the end of the week and remember to do that. So that was it's a great idea, and I've been less likely to miss my medications while I've been having those. And then there's also all of the beeping in the hospitals. There's some nurses are really good about stopping the beeping when it happens, but then there are other really great nurses who go out of their way to make sure the beeping never starts and they're there on time. So that's really helpful, and it makes the hospital stay as pleasant as it possibly could be. So.
Yeah. Well, the bubble pack, the pharmacy bubble pack video, you guys should go check that video out because you have that video out there as well, don't you? But we do have the "Why Does Everything Freaking Beep" video, and let's roll that now.
Hello, my name is Morgan Gleason, and I'm here to talk to you today about something that is not patient-centered in the healthcare world, and that thing is the IV pump. Whenever your IV pump has an issue, like my issue with it is that I get a certain med that is very frothy and bubbly, so in the middle of the night, like, air bubbles get stuck in the tubing, so every time the air bubble gets stuck, the IV pump starts beeping extremely loudly, very louder than your alarm clock loud. So that is very annoying, especially when you're sleeping, because it wakes you up like it's an alarm clock. And also, when you have a headache, it really doesn't do well because, you know, really loud noises hurt your head. So it just doesn't make sense why it would beep in the patient's room instead of out by the nurses where they could actually do something about it. The patients aren't able to do anything except press a silence button on it, which is a little button that only kind of makes the beeping stop for a couple minutes at a time, maybe 2 or 3 minutes at the most. And if your nurse doesn't come within those 2 or 3 minutes, then your IV pump ends up beeping the entire time for over and over and over again until somebody finally comes in and fixes it. But then when you do need the nurse because it's beeping, you have to press this button. It's the nurse button on the little remote, and when you press it, it goes out, it gets sent, your remote signal sends to somebody sitting in a desk outside the hall, and that person is supposed to page the nurse for your nurse to get the page to come to your room, and then they have to fix it. And a couple of times it's happened to me. It doesn't happen very often. They're normally pretty good about it. But a couple of times it's happened where the person at the desk will turn off the light outside of your room, so you're waiting for 30 or 40 minutes at a time without anybody knowing that you need anything, which is really annoying because you've been waiting for a long time, you're in pain, the thing is beeping, it just doesn't make sense. No, it really is annoying, actually. Also, there's a pain button on the remote, which does the exact same thing as the nurse button, and it doesn't make sense that they would have a pain button if it does the same thing as the other button. The people still come on and ask you what you need. Do you need anything? Do you need your nurse to come? And you're like, yes, I pressed the pain button, I'd like something for my pain. And they're like, well, I don't know, it just said the same thing as the nurse button. So that's not very helpful at all. And yeah, that's all I have for you guys today, but I'll post a new video soon. Thanks for watching, bye.
So there's a lot of insightful comments in there. Talk to us a little bit about a time when a caregiver kind of went out of their way, you were impressed by them. It was just like a wow moment for you as a patient.
So there are a lot of good doctors out there, and my rheumatologist and his nurse really go out of their way to make sure the experience is as great as it could be. And he always goes out of his way to talk to me, not just about the medical stuff, but about how my life is doing and what I'm doing in school and stuff like that. So it seems like he's actually trying to care about me instead of just what the medical problem is, which is nice. And then his nurse also makes makes my mom's life easier because she emails her and helps her schedule the appointments and stuff. So then there's also another organization, it's called Cure Jam, and it's like dedicated to finding a cure for my disease. And when I was first diagnosed, they called my mom and asked her if she had any questions, and it was really helpful. And they also had me talk to one of the other kids who had juvenile dermatomyositis. So they were really helpful when I was first diagnosed.
Oh, that's great. You know, when we were, as Tom referenced prior to your segment today, a few months ago, we went to Cleveland Clinic, and that's where we met and we were introduced to you. And at that conference, you spoke about shared decision making. You talked about how it's important for the patient to have a voice in their care plan. And the example you gave at the clinic that day was your hobby of horseback riding. Would you be willing to share that story?
Yes. So last fall, when I was recovering from meningitis, I was placed on hospital homebound, which is where they send teachers to my house to teach the lessons instead of me going to school. So that was really nice for me because I had the energy to also do my schoolwork, but also do the thing I love, which is horseback riding. So when my doctor in the fall, he wanted to take me off of it after the first semester, he wanted to put me back in the regular school. And I liked it a lot better when I had the energy to do both things, also schoolwork. So once we discussed it, he thought I needed the social aspect of it. And once I talked about how most of my friends are at horse anyway, and the few friends from school I see outside of school anyway. So we decided he liked that I was doing better off of it, so we talked about it, and he agreed to let me stay in hospital homebound.
That's awesome. And that must have meant so much to you and probably helped you recover,
Right.
more efficiently, and that's great. When you talk about caregivers, as a patient, as a consumer, who do you consider to be a caregiver in healthcare?
I consider, obviously, the doctors and the nurses, but also everybody else, like the lab techs and the janitors, even the janitors, because they're still around the patient, they're still contributing to the patient experience. So basically, what I think is anybody who is around the patient or is talking to the patient, or even the people who aren't, like the admissions people, I consider almost everybody that works in the hospital a caregiver.
Okay. What do you want caregivers to know today? You've got 1,000 leaders in front of you. What do you want caregivers to know?
I think that if you don't know something, you should always, always, always ask, because what you may want in their situation isn't always, in your patient's situation, isn't always what they will want. So if you don't know or you aren't sure, you should always ask them. Another thing is if they have questions or concerns or requests or anything, you shouldn't get frustrated with them, because even though they aren't always around it, so they don't know everything, so they obviously are going to have questions. You should instead try to teach them how to become a patient, because even though you go to med school to become a doctor, we didn't go to a patient school to become a patient.
Oh, that's good. So you got a birthday coming up, right?
On Sunday.
Huh? Happy birthday to Morgan, right? You're turning 16.
Yes.
Right? And I think you have a guest here with you today, don't you?
Yes, my mom, Amy.
Oh, very good. Let's welcome Amy Gleason to the stage. Hi, Amy.
Hi.
Welcome. I offered to sit with Amy or sit with Megan so that they get in these little tiffs sometimes with each other, because they're both very opinionated people. So you guys promise to behave?
We'll
Yes.
try.
Deal. All right, awesome. So when we were planning to we met at Cleveland and we said, hey, this would be awesome to have you guys share your story with our LDI group. And we started the planning process for bringing you guys on and went through kind of the interview content and things. And then all of a sudden, you just went dark on me. I couldn't get a hold of you guys. So Amy, why don't you explain to us a little bit about what's been going on the past few months?
So I went in the hospital.
Hold it.
I went in the hospital for acute diverticulitis, and then I ended up having to have about half of my colon removed. And Morgan actually was my primary caregiver while I was in the hospital. So she stayed with me both times I was there. And even once I got home, she drove me to the doctor's visits instead of the other way around and took me to get my prescriptions and helped me in the middle of the night when I needed things. And so it was really great to have somebody who understands what it's like and how frustrating it is when you're trapped somewhere and you can't do all the things you normally can. So she was a really big help.
Yeah, and you're doing better today. Things are going
much
well.
better, yes.
Yeah, it was so funny, guys. When I think I'd sent a note. I'm like, just trying to work out your travel and things. And they sent me this note. We're terribly sorry. We've been having surgery. And I'm like, well, I can wait. I mean, it's not that big of a deal. My gosh. So I guess what's been cool though is from that perspective, we're kind of able to turn the question a little bit to Morgan and ask. So, when you talk about experience, there's the experience as the patient, and then there's the experience as the family member. So, what has been your experience as a caregiver to your mom or a family member of the care experience with your mom's recent surgeries?
I've figured out the past few months that being a caregiver is really a hard job because you have to stay in the hospital with them. And, I mean, not that that's a bad thing, but, you have to sleep on the couch and wait on them pretty much. And she even had an incident where she's had to have her wound split open, and the doctor taught me how to pack it, and I don't have any medical training, so that was kind of scary because there was there was a point where I wasn't sure if it was healing properly, so I didn't know what to do, and I was worried. It's hard to be worried about her because you're worried and don't know if she's going to be okay. So.
Yeah. Now, I just learned this being back there, but when you talked about the what'd you call it, homeschooling,
The homebound.
Homebound, and you were sharing that she's nervous. Morgan has a senior project coming up, and she's nervous about having to talk, or are you talking in front of your senior class or something to this? Yeah. And I said, well, you're meeting in front of 1,000 people in a minute, so it seems to just come natural or something, but anyway, I don't know, that's probably me. But you shared something with me about your experience in all this healthcare and with your mom recently having surgery. What is it you're going to go do after you finish your high school?
I want to be a nurse anesthetist.
Yeah, that's very cool. That's very cool. And I think, one of the most impressive things that I've learned about you is you're going to graduate high school at 16.
Yeah.
And
You're
with all
early.
the experiences you've had, that's just absolutely phenomenal. So that's awesome. Congratulations on that. It's very good. All right, so we've talked about inpatient. We've talked about kind of scheduling and logistics of care. One thing we haven't talked about, which the rest of the U.S. is talking about, is high deductible plans and the consumerism of medicine, Walmart having doctors, EOBs. Talk to us a little bit about, because this has been going on since she was 11, talk to us about the experience of billing and bill legibility, and just walk us through some of that as the mom and having to deal with the financial side of this.
Sure. So for one thing, she sees 12 different doctors and a hospital. So that's a lot of different bills and different people sending us bills. And they're from all different systems. So they look different, and it's difficult to figure out, exactly which bill is what's going on. We have a high deductible plan. Last year, our out-of-pocket was $4,500, and this year it's $9,500. So it's quite a big difference and jump for us. And so in the beginning of the year, we almost always hit the out-of-pocket pretty early in the year with all that we have going on. But in the beginning of the year, it's a lot of money to be shelling out all of a sudden for every visit that we go to. And so we're pretty happy when we don't have to do that anymore. But we start to try to shop and find, okay, where is this procedure cheaper than that one? And we've changed where we go several times because we found a better deal at one than the other. I mean, assuming they're the same quality, they seem to be. And then we get all of these. First, we get a bill from the doctor or the hospital that says what the original charges are, but don't pay that because we're going to bill the insurance. And then we get an EOB in that has all kinds of information on it with little codes and little numbers that you have to flip and turn around and figure out which line item is what. And often they don't even have a description of what the thing was, so you have to kind of look it up. Then several months later, you get an actual bill that says you pay this amount. And so then you have to go back and find the EOB and match all those things up. And we found a lot of errors in that process and had to get them corrected. And then that's just more time consuming to go through. And a lot of times you don't get a lot of help from the doctor's offices or the hospital because they don't really know either. They just say, call your insurance company. So then you end up on the phone with them and they say, oh, well, they billed it wrong. And then you call the other place. And so it's a lot of time when you're trying to take somebody to 12 different visits, have a job, have school, manage your family, cook dinner. I mean, it's a lot of things to keep up with. So all the help that you can give around that is really beneficial.
Yeah. And one of the things we talked about, efficiency of the billing process earlier was you'll get, oftentimes they'll say, well, just go ahead and pay it and we'll issue a refund. Talk a little bit about that.
Right. So every place that we go has a different record from their system of how much of our deductible we've met at that point. So then they all insist that we must pay something, even though we've already met the amount. And they won't believe you unless you happen to have some printout with you that you've remembered to bring. And then they say, oh, well, you just pay it today and we'll send you a refund. But then now that's another thing to track and make sure you actually get that refund. It usually takes several months to get the refund. Then in the meantime, you have another visit and they're telling you again, you have to pay again. I'm like, well, I'm already getting one refund. So it's just a long process.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. So, our office has gotten to know you guys pretty well, but I'd love to just open the room we've got mics out here to ask Morgan or Amy questions about your guys' experience, or we've got a mic over there, a mic in the middle, and I think a mic over there. So I just welcome that. I'll wait for a moment and let you guys come up as you might have questions. Oh, looks like we have our first taker.
Hey, Morgan.
Hi.
My name is Cindy, and I'm a nurse practitioner. And I was curious about your career choice and whether it's just so that you can make sure that all your patients are sleeping.
Maybe a little bit. Yes.
Hi, Morgan. I'm Paige Dooley, and I've been a nurse for 29 years.
Hi.
And I'd like to know, we're getting ready to start bedside shift report, and at one of our hospitals, we're going to kick that off on Monday. My question to you is, while you've been in the hospital as an inpatient, have those caregivers performed bedside shift report? And if so, are there different degrees of who does it well, or what kinds of variations have you seen, or how do you know that one caregiver is handing off all the important information about you to the next caregiver? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So you were saying how do I know if they're sharing?
One nurse,
okay.
like your night nurse is leaving and your day nurse is coming on. How do you know that the really important stuff for the day nurse to know has been handed off to him or her?
See, I think sometimes, probably maybe a majority of the time, the information does get handed off, but there have been the times where I've had to mention things that didn't happen before, like that they didn't share, or like my preferences or stuff like that. I think you kind of just have to get to know the nurse and talk to them and make sure that they know what you need and know what you want for them to make sure that they have the information.
Do you think bedside shift report with the patient in the center of that is a good thing?
I think so.
So we wouldn't wake you up to do that, but
yes.
If I took care of you all night, then the nurse coming in on the day shift,
Right.
we would go in the room together, and with you in the middle, we would exchange all the important information using the computer as our guide to pass on information so that you're all set for the day.
I think that's a good thing, because if you miss something, then the patient can add in and tell you certain
Exactly.
things. So,
And at the same time, we will update your care board. And I don't know if you had experience with your care board in your room or not, but
yes.
okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay.
I will add one thing to that. So they often do the shift change in the morning when she's sleeping, and they come in and do it at volume 10 instead of like whispering and then going in the hall or talking to me, asking me in the hall. So it is respectful when you're sleeping. You know, you don't necessarily have to wake them up to do your shift report. And then we had one example where she gets a whole bunch of bottles of IVIG treatment, and that's how they know how many she's had, is they actually keep the bottles on the counter. Well, one nurse threw them away, and they actually had no idea how much she had gotten, and so it took like 2 hours of the pharmacy coming up and counting things and going
They
to the
couldn't
trash.
figure it out.
So that shift report change is really important for that.
Yeah, we didn't know if it was going to be the right amount at the end, and if it was too much or if it wasn't enough or anything like that. So,
Hi, Morgan. My name's Kristen. I've been a nurse for 17 years. First of all, thank you for coming, because I think there's so many of us that have been patients, but we're maybe not as brave as you are to speak up. And I think you do get numb to being a member of the healthcare, and then when you're a patient, sometimes you see another side. And so I think we can all relate to what you're saying, because I've worked in a hospital all my career. One of the things that I wanted to ask, though, have you found that when nurses or doctors or anybody comes into your room and they're able to explain things to you and take that time, that may change your mind on the importance of things, like things that maybe seem ridiculous or why are they doing this at a certain time? Have you found that that explanation really helps?
yes, like a couple of times in the very beginning, I was wondering why they had to take the blood pressure and all the vitals every hour when I was getting the IVIG. But then they explained it, the nurse, that they have to make sure that it's all stable so I don't end up with a bad reaction or anything. So I think that helps. But then I think it also helps to discuss it just in general, just make sure that they understand why you're doing everything. And yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Terry Rinker, and I'm on the billing side. So, Mom, I have a question for you. In the perfect world, what things should we include on our bills and statements that we send to you? What would be helpful?
So in a perfect world, I would like to know when she gets admitted what the base charges would be, or when we go to the outpatient visit, this is how much you would pay. And then, if there's extra things that are added, then that can be talked about at that time. But I'd really like to know before we go in how much I'm going to expect on the outside. And then when I get that bill, to be able to have it match up with my EOB, have a bill that explains, like, this is how much we charge, this is how much the insurance paid, all on one bill. Because otherwise I have to go look at all the different things and combine them together.
Sure. Can I ask another question? You made the comment about with the high deductible plans, people not knowing where it was and you're paying and then having to be refunded. So would you prefer not to pay anything until it's all cleared up? Or?
Well, I usually pay in the beginning, but once I say I've met my deductible, if it's $300 difference, then take my word for it. It's not like I haven't paid $9,200 at that point. So, obviously, I'm not going to leave you hanging. But, if it's $9,000 that's showing due, then, okay, that's reasonable to expect a payment.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you both.
I think we have time for one. You know what? We'll have time for 2 more questions. That's good. Yeah. Sorry.
You can go. Okay. Hi, I've been a nurse for 14 years, so I've done inpatient and outpatient both, so I know both sides of it, and I don't like beeping just as much as you don't like beeping, so in the ICU I always made sure that my patients didn't have beeps. But my question for you, as a nurse, I like to have the same consistent patients because then I felt like I knew them better and I felt like they were comfortable with me. as a patient, do you prefer to have the same nurses when you're in the hospital, as consistent as possible, so you know they know you, they know your likes, your dislikes, and your routine?
I think that definitely helps. Also, I've been in the hospital so much that I've pretty much gotten almost every nurse there. Right. So almost everyone I've had already, even if it was a while ago, they'll remember some stuff. But I do think it helps to have the same ones consistently, because they remember everything that you like and you don't like. And
have the nurses ever offered to write out what your preferences are and post it so that it's posted somewhere in your room to where anyone that walks in can see it?
That would be nice, but no, they've never offered that.
Okay. You might tell them they should do that, and they'll do it for you. Okay.
Hi, my name is Candace, and I've also been a nurse for a very long time, and I work on the behavioral health sides of the world. And it sounds like you've been dealing with this illness for a very long time, and I'm interested to know, while you were in the hospital or anywhere in your journey, how were your emotional needs met? Because I'm imagining between you and your family, there was a need for that, and I'd love to know if there are suggestions from your experiences to help our team.
I think that, especially when I was first diagnosed, that people maybe weren't as sensitive as they needed to be or should have been. I was 11, so I was still really young, so I'd never had any experience in the healthcare, I mean, other than my annual, doctor visits and shots and stuff. So I'd never had, and they were all very nice about it, but I think there could have been a better way to help me understand everything, because I certainly didn't understand everything in the beginning. And if somebody had sat down with me and talked about how this would affect me in the future and what I felt like was happening right now and anything that could have been better, then I think my experience would have been a lot better. Do you have anything?
I would say that if you can find a patient organization for their disease group that has patients that can share experiences, that is a huge, huge, huge help, because nobody really knows what it's like to live with the disease until you have it. And so we have this Cure JM group that she talked about. There's a parents board, and I have learned all about how to deal with schools and how to get the IEP and the 504 and even the hospital homebound and things like the pill box and all kinds of stuff that they share tips, and we just support each other. Some days parents, you don't want to show all of the hard times to your child either, and so we can be an outlet for each other and just kind of vent. Some days you just want to say, I don't like this disease, it's a bad day, and they understand, where my friends that don't face anything like that, they really don't get it. And they always tell me how great Morgan looks,
I don't think
she looks
anybody
good, she feels good. They can't really quite understand that just because you look good doesn't mean you feel good.
I don't think anyone actually understands how you feel and what it's like until you've had a condition where it's every day of your life, and every day you have to deal with something different. I mean, I've talked to the other kids with JM, and they give me tips on how to tell people what's happening, how to tell my friends, and just tricks, like if you drink something after taking your pills, it'll be better. Just daily tricks like that just really help.
Well, unfortunately, we have ran out of time, and but we really appreciate you guys making the trip from Florida to come up here, share your experience. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Well, what's really amazing, I mean, two things. I mean, one, we do have nurse anesthetists here, so, but I think the warm weather is going to keep her probably away from us. You can guess how many times that she's done this? Twice. Cleveland Clinic and here. So she's just an amazing, amazing young lady. And her mother They're doing it just for the majority of reasons that we get complaints. I can't tell you how many times people aren't complaining to take legal action against us. They're complaining so that it doesn't happen to somebody else. And there's exceptions to that, but it's so far and few between. People just want to be heard. And so I hope she really had an impact on all of you. And you know, as we move into the future, we'll start bringing some of our own patients, but we felt that this one just, you know, could really leave a mark and be a really great way to start this journey of really starting to embrace the voice of our customers. And again, it is the patient, but it's also, you know, the parent or the primary caretaker or the friend. It's not always just the patient. We've got a lot of customers that we have to tend to and care for.